Everyone believed the little girl was deaf. Her father, the doctors, even the entire town. For years her world was drowned in silence. But one woman, a simple nanny, noticed something strange, tiny signs that revealed a secret no one else could see. What she discovered not only shocked the father, but changed the child's life forever. Stay with me till the very end, because this story will leave you speechless. And don't forget to subscribe, because more heart-touching stories like this are coming your way. The grand mansion of Mr. Harrison stood tall at the edge of the town, its white pillars glowing under the morning sun, admired by everyone who passed by. To the world outside, the Harrison family was blessed beyond measure: wealth, influence, and a picture-perfect life. But behind those heavy doors, silence ruled. Not the natural silence of peace, but the kind that felt forced, suffocating, almost unnatural. The source of that silence was his little daughter, Emily, a fragile girl with wide, innocent eyes. From the time she was 3, doctors had declared her deaf, and her father had accepted the verdict with a heavy heart. He loved her dearly, but he believed she would never hear his voice, never laugh at the sound of music, never know the joy of a mother's lullaby. So he raised her in stillness, walking softly in hallways, speaking less and less, and keeping the house quiet, as if even sound itself might hurt her. Friends and relatives admired his devotion, calling him a noble father who sacrificed his own joy for his child's comfort. But Emily lived like a shadow, locked away in a world of gestures, silence, and restrained emotions. Then came Clara, a young nanny full of warmth, kindness, and keen eyes. From her very first day in the mansion, she sensed something strange. Emily was not like other children who were born without sound. Her gaze was too alert, her reactions too quick, her eyes darting toward sudden movements as if guided by something unseen. Clara dismissed it at first, thinking it was her imagination. But soon little signs began to appear, too many to ignore. Once, as they sat by the window, a carriage rumbled noisily on the street, and Emily's small head turned sharply toward it. Another time, when a bird shrieked loudly from a branch, Clara caught a flicker of fear in Emily's eyes, as though she had felt the sound itself. And on one peculiar morning, when Clara softly whispered the child's name while standing behind her, Emily's shoulders tensed ever so slightly. A chill ran down Clara's spine. Could it be possible? Was this child not truly deaf, but only hidden behind a lie too powerful for her tiny voice to break? Clara didn't know the answer yet, but something inside told her that Emily's silence was not what it seemed. Days passed, and Clara's unease grew stronger. The mansion, though filled with priceless paintings and polished marble floors, felt like a prison where joy was forbidden to exist. Emily rarely smiled, her small lips pressed into silence, as if afraid of being caught enjoying something she wasn't supposed to. Yet Clara's sharp eyes kept catching fragments of truth that whispered louder than the silence itself. One evening, when the family gathered in the grand dining hall, a heavy silver spoon slipped from a servant's hand and clattered against the floor. The sudden noise rang across the room, and Clara's heart skipped a beat as she saw Emily flinch violently, her little fingers clutching at her dress. Nobody else seemed to notice. Mr. Harrison calmly continued cutting his meat, convinced that his daughter was lost to the world of sound. Clara's mind, however, was spinning. If Emily could react to such noises, why was she pretending not to? Or worse, why was she forced to pretend? Later that night, Clara sat by Emily's bedside, pretending to tuck her into sleep. She softly hummed a lullaby, a tune her own mother used to sing. Emily's eyelashes fluttered, and her lips trembled as though the sound reached her heart, awakening something she had been taught to bury. Clara leaned closer and whispered, "You can hear me, can't you?" For a moment, Emily's wide eyes filled with fear. Then she quickly turned away, burying her face in the pillow as if hiding from the truth itself. Clara's heart ached. She wanted to take the girl in her arms, assure her she wasn't alone, but something held Emily back, something bigger than Clara understood. The nanny realized then that the silence in this house was not born from deafness, but from fear. Fear planted deep inside a child too young to fight against it. Clara resolved that night she would uncover the truth, no matter what it cost her, even if it meant facing the anger of a father blinded by grief and pride. Because behind Emily's silence was not weakness, it was a cry for help, hidden in plain sight. Clara began watching Emily more carefully than ever, each day adding more pieces to a puzzle that no one else even realized existed. The little girl's reactions were subtle, but for a trained eye, they were impossible to ignore. When footsteps echoed suddenly in the corridor, Emily's body stiffened. When a door slammed far across the hall, she blinked rapidly, as if the sound had startled her. Clara noticed that Emily sometimes positioned herself near the window whenever birds chirped or dogs barked outside, her eyes sparkling for a brief moment as though she was listening to a secret world she dared not admit knowing. The nanny's heart broke with every small discovery. This child had been living in a cage of lies built not by her own hands, but by the mistakes of others. Clara wondered endlessly why Emily had never spoken the truth to her father. Did she fear being scolded, or worse, not believed at all? The mansion was a fortress, not just of stone, but of authority and pride. Mr. Harrison, though a loving father, trusted the words of doctors more than the expressions of his own daughter. Clara sensed that Emily had grown up with the certainty that her voice and her truth would mean nothing compared to the heavy verdict stamped upon her by men in white coats. One afternoon, Clara decided to test her suspicion. As Emily was drawing quietly with colored pencils, Clara dropped a small metal bell onto the carpet behind her. It made only the faintest of sounds, yet Emily's hand froze mid-stroke. She did not turn around, but her grip tightened on the pencil until her knuckles turned white. Clara's chest tightened. The truth was undeniable now. Emily could hear. But still, why was she hiding it? Later, as she helped the girl into bed, Clara noticed tears glistening in her eyes. She softly asked, "Are you afraid, Emily?" The child pressed her lips together, refusing to answer, but her trembling shoulders betrayed her. Clara wanted to press further, but she held back, realizing that trust had to be earned carefully. Forcing the truth too soon might only deepen the fear already rooted in Emily's fragile heart. The following week, the mansion held one of its usual grand dinners, where guests in elegant clothes filled the hall with polite conversations and laughter. For Clara, it was another chance to watch Emily among the crowd. The child sat quietly beside her father, small hands folded on her lap, her face a mask of calm obedience. But Clara saw what others did not, her eyes darting nervously when the orchestra began to play in the corner of the hall, her chest rising and falling faster as the music swelled. No one noticed, not even Mr. Harrison, who believed his daughter was untouched by the sounds filling the room. Clara's heart pounded as she realized Emily wasn't just hearing, she was feeling every note, and her body betrayed her secret. Then, fate provided the undeniable moment. A waiter carrying a tray of crystal glasses stumbled near the table, sending one shattering onto the floor. The sharp ringing filled the hall, and Emily recoiled so strongly that her chair nearly tipped. Gasps escaped from the guests, but they quickly dismissed it as a startled child's reaction. Clara, however, felt the ground shift beneath her. This was the proof she had been waiting for. Emily could not hide her truth any longer, even from herself. That night, after the guests had left and the house grew quiet, Clara went to Emily's room. She sat on the edge of the bed and gently took the child's hand. "Emily," she whispered, "I know your secret. You can hear me, can't you?" For a moment, Emily's wide eyes shimmered with panic, then filled with tears that rolled silently down her cheeks. She nodded once, trembling. Clara's chest ached with both relief and sorrow. "Why didn't you tell your father?" she asked softly. Emily clung to her, whispering so faintly that Clara barely caught the words. "Because he won't believe me. He'll take me back to the doctors and they'll say I'm lying. Then he'll be sad again, and it will be my fault." Clara held her close, realizing the weight of the fear this small child carried. It wasn't the silence that imprisoned her, but the terror of being dismissed, of being told her truth did not matter. Clara could not sleep that night. Emily's confession echoed in her mind, each word a dagger of injustice. How could a child be forced into such a cruel silence, not because of her own inability, but because of the blind certainty of adults who trusted authority more than love? Clara sat by the candlelight, her thoughts restless. She knew she carried a dangerous secret now. If she confronted Mr. Harrison without proof, he might dismiss her as a foolish nanny and send her away, leaving Emily trapped in the same fate. Yet doing nothing would be even worse, condemning the girl to years of false silence. The next morning, Clara began to watch Emily with renewed purpose, testing her gently, carefully. She dropped a book to the floor, and Emily flinched. She whispered stories while braiding her hair, and Emily's lips curved in a shy smile, though she tried to hide it. Clara tapped her fingers against the window pane, and Emily's gaze followed the rhythm unconsciously. There was no doubt. Emily's hearing was as alive as any child's, but when Clara hinted again about telling her father, Emily shrank back, clutching her doll tightly. "He won't listen," she said in a broken whisper, "and if the doctors come again, they'll say the same thing. He only believes them." Clara's heart broke at the thought of a child so young learning that her truth was worthless against the power of authority. She decided she would not let Emily fight this battle alone. That evening, Clara gathered her courage and went to Mr. Harrison's study. The air was thick with the scent of books and smoke from his pipe. He looked up, stern but polite, expecting another report about his daughter's meals or lessons. Clara hesitated, her hands trembling, then said, "Sir, I believe Emily is not deaf. I've seen her react to sounds, to whispers, to music. She hears and she understands." His expression darkened, lines of disbelief cutting across his face. "Do you mean to suggest that all the doctors were wrong? That my daughter has been lying to me?" His voice carried both anger and pain. Clara's heart raced, but she stood firm. "Not lying, sir. Afraid. She's afraid you won't believe her because the doctors never did. But I have seen it with my own eyes." Mr. Harrison's face hardened as he rose from his chair, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the study. Clara felt her knees weaken under the weight of his disapproval, but she refused to look away. "Enough of this nonsense," he said coldly. "My daughter has been examined by the finest specialists in the country. You are a nanny, not a doctor. Do not speak of matters you cannot understand." Clara's heart sank, but she summoned her courage. "Sir, please, I don't need to be a doctor to see the truth. I live with Emily every hour of the day. I have watched her turn at the sound of her name. I've seen her frightened by sudden noises. I've heard her whisper in her sleep. She can hear, sir, but fear has stolen her voice." For a moment, Mr. Harrison's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but pride quickly smothered the doubt. He paced the room, his voice rising. "Do you know what you're suggesting? That I've let my daughter suffer in silence for years because I trusted medical experts? That I have been a fool?" Clara shook her head, her voice trembling but steady. "No, sir. Not a fool. A father who believed what he was told. But Emily has been living in a prison of silence, and it is killing her spirit. She needs you to believe her, even just once, more than she needs the opinion of any doctor." Mr. Harrison slammed his hand on the desk, the sound reverberating through the study. Clara winced, but then she noticed something. So did Emily. She had slipped quietly into the room, her tiny frame leaning against the doorframe, her eyes wide with terror. The loud noise had jolted her, and in that instant, Clara knew the truth was standing in front of them both. Emily's lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but fear locked the words inside. Clara turned quickly, kneeling down to the girl's level. "It's all right, Emily," she said softly. "Show him. Let your father hear you." The room grew tense, the silence heavier than ever, as father and daughter stared at each other, separated not by deafness but by disbelief and fear. For a moment, time itself seemed frozen in the study. Mr. Harrison stood rigid behind his desk, his face pale and unreadable, while Emily clung to the edge of the doorframe, her small body trembling. Clara stayed kneeling beside her, silently urging her to be brave. The heavy silence stretched on until Emily's lips quivered and a faint sound escaped. A whisper so fragile it might have gone unnoticed if Clara hadn't leaned forward to catch it. "Papa." The single word, quiet but clear, sliced through the air like lightning. Mr. Harrison's eyes widened, his breath caught in his throat, and for a heartbeat he looked as though the ground had given way beneath him. His daughter had spoken. He had heard her voice for the first time in years, and it shattered everything he thought he knew. Emily's chest heaved as tears streamed down her face. "I can hear, Papa. I always could," she whispered again, her voice breaking with both fear and relief. The proud man who had hidden behind authority and denial staggered back a step, gripping the desk for support. Clara placed a steadying hand on Emily's shoulder, her voice gentle. "She was afraid, sir. Afraid no one would believe her, because the doctors never did. But she's telling you the truth now." For the first time, Mr. Harrison's stern expression cracked. He looked at his daughter as though seeing her for the very first time, his eyes filling with disbelief and guilt. He sank into his chair, covering his face with his hands, torn apart by the realization that his trust in strangers had stolen years of his child's joy. Emily took a timid step forward, her small voice trembling but insistent. "Please don't be angry, Papa. I didn't want to make you sad. That's why I stayed quiet." Mr. Harrison dropped his hands, his face lined with sorrow. He reached out his arms and pulled her into his chest, holding her tightly, his voice hoarse. "No, my darling. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you." Clara's eyes glistened as she watched father and daughter wrapped in an embrace that was long overdue, their silence finally broken by truth. The following days in the Harrison mansion were filled with a storm of emotions. Mr. Harrison, once a man of unshakable pride, now walked through his halls with a heavy burden of guilt. He replayed every memory of the past years, the quiet dinners, the hushed corridors, the way he forbade music in the house, all because he believed his daughter lived in silence. Now he realized it wasn't Emily who had been trapped. It was his own heart, chained by blind faith in the doctor's verdict. Emily, though relieved to have spoken the truth, still carried a flicker of fear in her eyes, as if at any moment her father might call her a liar again. Clara stayed close, gently guiding the little girl to use her voice more, to laugh, to sing softly, and to discover the beauty of sound she had been denied for so long. One evening, Clara encouraged Emily to hum a melody in the garden. The child's sweet voice, hesitant at first, floated into the air. Mr. Harrison stood at the doorway, watching, his chest tight with regret, but also swelling with pride. For the first time, he allowed himself to truly hear her, not as a patient, not as a diagnosis, but as his daughter. That night he sat with Clara in the study, his voice low. "I have been a fool," he admitted. "I let the word of strangers outweigh the truth of my own child. Years of her life stolen, and all because I trusted silence over love." Clara shook her head softly. "You're not a fool, sir. You're a father who wanted to protect his child. But now you have a second chance. Don't waste it." Those words stayed with him. The next morning, the mansion stirred differently. Mr. Harrison ordered music to be played in the halls again. The piano that had long been shut was opened, and for the first time in years the walls echoed with life. Emily's laughter grew stronger with each passing day, and Clara felt her heart swell as the house began to heal. What once was a prison of silence was slowly transforming into a sanctuary of sound, joy, and love. As weeks passed, the transformation inside the Harrison mansion became undeniable. The once cold, echoing halls now rang with the sound of footsteps, laughter, and even music that had been locked away for years. Emily, once timid and withdrawn, began to blossom like a flower touched by sunlight for the first time. Her voice grew stronger with every word she dared to speak, and her laughter became the sweetest sound her father had ever heard. Mr. Harrison, though still weighed down by guilt, made every effort to rebuild the years he had lost. He asked her questions daily, listened intently to her answers, and even encouraged her to share her dreams. Dreams she had kept buried, believing no one cared enough to hear them. Clara remained the quiet guardian of this rebirth, watching with pride as Emily's world expanded beyond fear. Yet not all was easy. There were moments when Emily's fear returned, moments when a loud noise made her freeze, or when a memory of the past silenced her for hours. During those times, Mr. Harrison would kneel before her and say, "I hear you, my darling. Whatever you feel, whatever you wish to say, I will always listen." Slowly, Emily began to trust that his words were not just promises, but truths. One afternoon she surprised them both. Standing in the garden where the birds sang above, she lifted her face to the sky and sang a simple melody. Her voice, pure and fragile yet filled with courage, floated across the estate. Servants paused in awe. Clara pressed a hand to her heart, and Mr. Harrison's eyes filled with tears. It was the sound he thought he would never hear, the living proof that love and faith had triumphed over years of silence. In that moment, the mansion was no longer a monument to wealth and authority, but a home alive with hope, joy, and second chances. The neighbors who once admired its cold perfection now spoke of its warmth, of how the mighty Harrison house had finally learned to breathe again. The story of the Harrison family soon became more than a private tale of sorrow and redemption. It became a lesson whispered across the town. People who once admired the mansion only for its grandeur now spoke of the transformation inside its walls, of how a father's pride was broken and rebuilt by the gentle courage of a child. Mr. Harrison, once so certain in his authority, humbled himself before the truth. He admitted to friends and neighbors that he had been blind, not because his daughter was silent, but because he never dared to listen beyond the words of others. That confession, rather than weakening his image, made him more respected than ever, for people saw in him not a flawless man, but a father who found the strength to change. Emily herself became the brightest light of the household. With Clara always by her side, she learned to embrace the sounds she had been denied for so long, the chirping of birds, the melody of the piano, the warmth of her father's laughter. What had once been her prison became her playground, filled with the joy of discovery. Sometimes she would sit at the piano and press the keys timidly, then turn to her father with wide eyes, and he would smile, urging her to keep playing. Each note that echoed through the halls was not just music, but a celebration of her freedom. Clara, too, felt her own reward. She knew she had not only changed the life of one little girl, but she had restored love to a family that had been dying in silence. Watching Emily dance through the garden, her laughter carrying on the wind, Clara felt peace in her heart, knowing she had fulfilled her purpose. The Harrison mansion, once feared for its oppressive quiet, became a beacon of hope, a reminder that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way to the surface. And in the end, the greatest sound of all was not music or laughter or footsteps, but the bond of trust between a father and his child, finally strong enough to silence all doubt.